Yo, I'm Toycat, and the President of the United States has just gone to the United Nations to tell Europe that their countries are being ruined by migration. Now, this is very notable given that it's coming from the President of the country with the most migrants in the world, but it isn't something that he's just saying as empty rhetoric. It's something that's being backed up at home with a brand new $100,000 fee for skilled worker visa applicants. If you live in the US, these are commonly called H-1B visas, but as well as a $100,000 fee, there's also a new $250 visa integrity fee for all visas that are being issued. And even if you are coming from a friendly country on a tourist entry, you're still going to have to double your fee up to $40. Basically, the United States is going to get drastically more expensive to enter, and I want to talk about the policy of why. It's really easy to talk about this as a pure culture war issue and say, does he not understand that migrants are the best people and we love them all? Or does he not understand that migrants are just people from other countries and that you can't inherently demonize? A lot of people love to jump on it and just talk about it that way because it's easy to talk about what you already believe in, but let's actually talk about the policy here because they are very interesting. First, the $100,000 fee for skilled visa work applications. This seems like it's a little bit of a joke, especially because you can see in the background of the announcement there's a giant gold card. This is the Trump card, and it is in fact a real thing. This is a real US government website, as silly as that is to say out loud, but that is a $1 million fee that you can pay to get US residency after you've been vetted by the DHS. Basically, you can buy residency into the US now for just $1 million, which is actually a decrease in some ways than what was there before. But also, if you want to come in on a skilled worker visa, also known as H-1B, you have to pay $100,000. This is interesting because critics have argued that this H-1B visa system, where a random number of people, it's genuinely is a lottery, by the way, where a large number of people can enter the US and they would argue undercut the US workforce, while supporters, including billionaire Elon Musk, would argue it allows the US to attract top talent from around the world. See, this argument, the second argument is that these skilled workers cannot be found inside the US. If you want to find people this skilled, you have to go abroad, and indeed, statistically, according to Reuters, 70% of those go to India, while people would argue in the reverse, like, well, if 70% of these people are coming from India, it clearly seems like you're using this as an excuse to hire people from a country where the average wage is a lot lower. And so the gambit here is that rather than getting rid of these H-1Bs or lowering the amount, instead making a $100,000 a year fee for the company to pay is making the company decide, is the person valuable enough to pay $100,000 a year? By the way, they said $100,000 a year, and then the press secretary later said it'd be a $100,000 fee. Then they later said it would only apply to future applicants if they are outside the country at the time of applying. Basically, that is the reasonable way to apply the policy, is to say, yeah, everyone here in a H-1B visa, you guys can continue doing it how you do. Right now, the costs are about $1,500 a year, it's been suggested, based on what I've read right here, although that obviously varies a lot. But anyone new that wants to come into the country for Amazon or Tata or Microsoft or Meta or Apple or Google or any of these large companies, they are now going to have to pay $100,000 a year, which means that, yeah, if these people are so valuable that they are worth more than $100K plus their salary to the government, then yeah, they will continue to come into the country. But if these are people that could be, if these are jobs that could be done by American, but they just figured it was a saving, then they won't go for it. And so it's an interesting way to say, yeah, you should prioritize people living in the country, which is effectively how all immigration rules are written in any country that I've ever looked at. But this is a way of kind of like forcing the hand a little bit. And is this a good thing? Well, I mean, if you believe that skilled worker visa applicants are both so skilled that they cannot be found inside the US, but not skilled enough to be worth paying $100,000 a year for, then yeah, this sucks. This is going to have huge downsides, and lots of big businesses, including JP Morgan, but there's been lots of businesses saying that, yeah, this is going to lead to downsides in the long run, because in the short term, there will be a windfall, but in the long run, a lot of people suggest that there will be an innovation edge lost in the US, because these people who are worth, who are maybe going to not pay the fee, are going to go elsewhere, and they'll be working for different countries to build their tech market. This is something which is why what e-marketer analyst Jeremy Goldman argues is trading dynamism for short-sighted protectionism, and I think that ultimately that probably is what it is. Trying to build up Americans at the cost of overseas workers makes a lot of sense, unless a lot of people won't have Americans or overseas workers at which point, you know, you have lost that job to somewhere else. Is this a good decision? Honestly, it's one of those policy decisions that you'll have to follow up later. I think the one thing everyone can agree on, though, is that it was announced very poorly, and that a lot of people had to, like, suddenly get off their flights and come back to the US because their employer said, you need to do this. But the fact that your employer can say, you need to be here right now, fly all the way across the world, is maybe a sign that there's a bit of a coercive nature to the policy. Because if you actually look at the way it works right now, it is the H-1B visa application is a lottery. It's not that they go for only the highest skilled people or only the people willing to pay the most or whatever else. They just say some number of people who want to come into the US from abroad can come into the US from abroad, and then their employer has full control over whether they get to stay there. And so a $100,000 fee might be better for those workers if there is some other pathway that is less coercive for the employers. Which is interesting because all other pathways are about to get $250 more expensive. This is the new visa integrity fee, which does apply to every visa, including the H-1B. So we say that the H-1B is going to get $100,000 more expensive. It's actually going to get $100,000 and $250 more expensive, but the $250 is refundable. The idea is meant to be that a lot of people come into the US. If you've ever looked at, have you ever heard about Americans talking about like people coming into, that's the Tower of London. Have you heard about Americans talking about people coming in over the southern border? Most people from Central and South America get to the US not via the land border, but by getting a visa and then overstaying it. This is one of the reasons why it's so hard for people from Mexico and Guatemala to get visas to the US. But basically, the way to stop people overstaying is to take some money from them and say you can only get that back when you leave the country. So when you get reimbursed after your travel visa expires if you didn't overstay the visability date by more than 5 days. Effectively saying that if too many people are overstaying, we'll take some. I kind of like how bonds work, but then that's why this is so controversial. It's like a, what do they call it? Bail bonds in America. But it's like when you are when you have court at a later date and the police fear that you're going to flee. They take a bunch of your money and say, you get this back after you've done the thing. It's an easy way to ensure that, but it is also going down this same pathway of assuming that, like, yeah, people by default are criminals and only the good people will get their money back. This is a very, very hostile fee, you might say, which is the same argument made for this $100,000 fee, arguing that, yeah, I mean, clearly you have to be worth at least $100,000 per year plus whatever your salary is to be here. It seems hostile even if there's any logic below it, which is maybe one of the problems with discourse about entering countries. Because ultimately, you know what, the fee that is the smallest, but I want to talk about anyway, because if you are watching this channel right now and you have any intention of going to the US, I like to give travel advice. Did you know it's about to get more expensive? This is from the DHS website, Department of Homeland Security, and if you're non-American, every 2 years you have to remind them that you haven't committed a genocide, which is one of my favorite dumb forms. If you accidentally hit yes to I've committed a genocide, by the way, it's not just a goof where they say, are you sure you're not wrong? You have to apply for visas for the rest of your life, and it's a whole big pain. So don't say that you committed a genocide if you've entered the US, unless you have committed a genocide. If you haven't committed a genocide and you hit yes, that is lying and bad. If you have committed genocide and you hit no, that is also lying and bad. And it's definitely the worst crime you'll ever commit, so you probably won't do it. Anyway, so the cost of an ESTA application is going to increase, and it's going to go from $21 to $40. What's interesting, though, is if you look at the ESTA fee, it's actually not going up for the travel promotion portion, because I think this if you are, most countries don't have an ESTA-style system, or didn't when the US started, but nowadays it's more common for countries to effectively charge you to enter. I think a good example is the UK has just introduced a £10 one. The EU now has a travel fee. Countries are starting to realize, like, oh, all of these tourists coming on cheaper flights, I bet we could take some of the money that's been freed up by this. And so what's interesting is the ESTA fee was meant to be to promote the United States. If you've ever seen a Visit the US ad, it's been paid for by me, you're welcome. But what's interesting is the fact that, yeah, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act added to the Treasury General Fund fee no less than $13. Basically, the fee's gone up by $13 so that the Treasury General Fund can go up by $13 every time someone enters America, and the operational fee has gone up from $4 to $10, allowing the US to spend 2.5 times as much on operating the ESTA applications, whatever that means. And so isn't that exciting? The answer is no. Basically, what is happening here across all three of these policies, and maybe you could argue the fourth, if we look at this Trump gold card, from the 45th and 47th President of the United States with an eagle in his suit pocket, I'd like to remind you. What can we actually say what can we actually like take from all of this? I would say there is an interesting move but by a country that has, again, historically the largest immigrant population in the world, and which has been steadily noticing this increase in immigrant population. A lot of Americans are foreign born. This was true in the early 1800s, and it kind of stayed into the early 1900s, and then the US went on a big immigrant downturn, and now they're on an immigrant upkick again. Some people find this great, like is immigrant food not the best? Did immigrants not build this country? Yeah, it's a funny thing, by the way. People say that in the UK. Like people are like, yeah, immigrants built this. Wait, immigrants built this. Wait, I got it. There we go. Immigrants built this country, and it's like you got the rhetoric from the wrong place. That's what you say in America because it's literally true. Because whatever. Anyway, what's interesting though is the fact that like if you look at the United States, you can see that there's a massive increase in immigration. And so if you are America and you're like in the way that we used to have oil being a great resource or like lithium or whatever else, as all of these resources are clear, you can kind of look at the desire of people from all around the world to immigrate to America as being one of your assets. Lots of people are going to visit America for tourism or to be a skilled worker or for any form of visaed reason. And so you can either say, yeah, their value is provided once they are here, or you can take the second tact of saying, actually, if you're going to come in, if so many people, 47 million immigrants want to come into the US, if we charge them a little bit more, that would probably help with money. Right now, the Western world is broke. And there is a real argument I'd like to point out that you can never be broke as a government, and I totally understand that all you have to do is not pay your debt or print a bunch of money to get out of that debt. But like I think anyone who knows like sense is like, yeah, well, there's a reason that they lend you the money, and if they think that you're not going to pay them back, they won't lend you the money. And if you just start printing the money, then you're devaluing everyone's money, effectively creating the same problem, but different point, different time. But if we look at countries by their debt, you can see that by total debt as gross percentage points, you can see the US is 8th. And if we go by gross debt per household, the US is also 8th. The US is one of the most in-debt countries in the world. And although they have their magical privilege of the ability to print not just national currency, but kind of international currency, there is this big problem that lots of nations, especially ones that are seeking to have immigrants, are trying to fill by saying, yeah, let's get workers in, people between 20 and 65, who will contribute tax revenues. But if you're so effectively luring people in to contribute to your tax system anyway, wouldn't it be clever to also make it a little bit more expensive for them? Perhaps $100,000 a year more expensive, or $250 more expensive, or even if it's just $17 a person. If your biggest export now is your country itself, is the notion of being able to live there, then is charging more actually the smartest thing you can do? Because ultimately at this point, the US spends about 14% of all government revenue on public debt. This means on just the interest, sorry, not repaying the debt, just paying the interest to keep the current amount of debt. Which means if you've ever had federal taxes collected, or if you enter the US on an ESTA or a visa, 14% of this fee, if you do pay it, $100,000 a year, 14,000 of that money that you give to the government will just immediately get spent on interest on things that were bought in the past that the US government isn't paying back and won't pay back, but wanted back then and now wants to have now. This is a problem every country has, especially as borrowing is getting more expensive. I could argue this is the issue behind everything, but every country needs to raise dramatically more money, not to have brand new things, not to build nice bridges or to have better Medicare, as America calls it, or better defense or social security. Countries need to raise a bunch of extra money to keep paying that interest on their existing debt. Because if they don't, they have to borrow money to pay the interest on their debt, which means they'll have more debt and more interest. And so one of the ways you can choose to do this, if you think that your biggest export is people, if you think your biggest export is having people coming into the country, then one of the smartest ways that you can do that is by charging people to get in. Is this what Trump is thinking as he does this? Honestly, I think that even if you are a Trump whisperer, I don't think you know. I think if you are a member of the public, who's to say? But if you are entering the US or Canada, or if you're entering Canada or the USA, let's say, then I think things are going to get a little bit more expensive for you. And yeah, I think the one downside of this is like, so that's a US decision that is either being made to get fewer immigrants into the country or to make more money from the ones that exist. You could argue there's kind of an equilibrium that will happen with both. But I think that the really interesting thing here is that it is causing the world to be a more closed off place. even though this, even if you want to, even if you agree with all of the actual policy decisions of like, yeah, people shouldn't be overstaying their visas. If we give them permission to be here, they should leave when we ask them to leave. Or like, why are these freeloading Europeans coming into our country not paying us $13 for our general treasury fund fee? Or, why is it that people are coming from India in large part and not paying us $100,000 for the privilege? You could make these arguments, and whatever they are, I think is fine. But the net effect of all of these policies, because of the world's reaction to them, because of just like the UN's reaction and just like the culture war that you'll see in a billion places, ultimately, I think it's going to cause the world to be more closed off, because if someone is willing to change these things on the fly, if a leader is willing to have such a drastically different to world opinion, it's going to cause countries to be like, whoa, that the American public might like this, but I'm not sure this is what we agree with, and that does have net negative effects in the long run. But for now, I guess everything's fine. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Is that a good ending? Yeah, it is. I will enjoy this video. If you're looking to enter the US, statistically, you're probably not doing it on a skilled worker visa. Statistically, if you're watching this video, you're probably not going to have to pay the fee. And if you're from Canada, you are now the only nation that gets into America for free. So I guess, that's nice. Although I think, by and large, Canadians are not visiting America right now. So they're not taking advantage of that. But yeah, with that said, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. And I'll see you in the next video. Good. Wait, let's see what's over here. Now fewer people will see this. Isn't that sad? Wait, what is that? Anyway, thank you, and I'll see you next time. Oh wait, I have one last thing. If we're talking about money anyway, do you wanna? So I haven't posted for a month now. I didn't realize it'd gotten that long. I've been very, very busy with other projects, keeping stuff afloat. And what's interesting is you can see the channel made $153 here anyway. Something long tail. But I want to talk about the sponsorship thing. I've said I'd mention this somewhere, so I'll mention it here. I got sponsored on this video. How has Brexit really gone? By Incogni. And I said I'd talk about the sponsorship revenue once enough time had passed and I could legally do that. And so this video made $37 from Google AdSense revenue, which is great. I think the video took something like an hour from me and then a few hours from Naito to make. So depending on how you value that, that's either well below minimum wage, well above. But either way, I was like happy enough with that. 13 people subscribed. That's good. But what's interesting is you can... Why did people skip the ad? I've never seen such a crazy dip, by the way. But this is so basically in exchange for being featured in the description and for me to talk about it between this moment and this moment, I interestingly was paid $800, which is 20 times the amount, more than 20 times the amount I made from ad revenue. And so if you're curious as to why so many YouTubers do sponsorships, even though they're annoying and apparently about sort of if 67% of people are watching there and 57 here and 42 there, about 20 to 15% of all viewers skip that section. That's like 1 in 4 people that were watching at that point. And so if you're curious as to why YouTubers put bits like that in there, even though people don't like watching them, well, there's your answer. Because you make 20 times as much money. Why don't I have more sponsors on this channel? Because I think I'm too picky. I think when there's something that's a blatant scam, I got offered hundreds of dollars for something that will basically try to rob children, and I was like, I'm not promoting your dumb app. But yeah, if you're curious as to the end result in that, but that's also why it makes sense for a lot of YouTubers to pay someone full time. If I hired someone and they got me 4 ad spots a month, I could pay them, a $2,000 a month salary just to get 4 ads, and they would have made more money than that. Because I think $800 is below the going rate for... Anyway, whole different thing, different time. Maybe you find that interesting. If you didn't, then I'm sorry that you watched it. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow for a high-quality video. Yeah, it's been in the works for a few weeks. Just again, it's also been pushed back by all the other craziness going on. Thank you. Second channel. Don't care. Bye.